No, it's all good, man. So again, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out. I
Yes,
appreciate it.
thank you for having me, and I've checked out some of your other very eclectic people, entertainment, business, motivational, all that. I hope I fit somewhere in the mixture in a fun way.
Oh, you're going to be right. You're in the right company, man.
Right.
I love your world of comedy and music and writing, and
Mhm.
there's just so much going on. You just think you're a creative force. So so to begin this venture into your world, I want to know, how did you make it through the pandemic? How did that time period change or shift anything that you still feel today as a creative?
The pandemic for me was an unusual case. If it had happened just a few years earlier, it would have been vastly different. But at the beginning of 2020, I was starting to get divorced. I was living on my own. My two kids were grown up and out. One was about to finish college. I did not have a regular day job doing like little freelance writing gigs I could do from home. So, in some ways, nothing was deeply disrupted for me. I mean, yes, everything was wildly uncertain and frightening, and I stockpiled canned soup and all that, and just wondered if I go down, how long do I have to live in this apartment by myself? But in some ways, I feel very lucky because there are people with little kids and kids in school, and people whose jobs were destroyed, and people who obviously were deeply, deeply sick or dead. And one of my daughters was quite sick early on in the first wave of COVID here in New York City. Turned out all right, luckily. But yes, it was very upsetting to watch from the perspective of my little man cave and thinking, I'm okay today, which I'm grateful for, but I don't know how this plays out.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do these days
Right.
in 2025. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids. It's career day. And one of the kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?"
All right. First of all, kids, don't eat paste. I mean, it's tasty. I occasionally indulge in a dab of paste, but don't make it a steady diet. Uh, Career-wise, well, that's tricky, isn't it? We are in an age where creative people and entertainment business people have found all the guardrails blown apart. There is almost no television or movie industry that's recognizable to someone like me who came up in previous decades. I have a lot of friends who are very much wondering what they're going to do and how they're going to keep making any money in this business. For me, I've been lucky. Number one, I had this 25-year steady job at the Letterman show. That kind of job is going to be very, very, very hard to find from here on out. I did okay for a long time. I own my apartment. I'm not worried about my mortgage. So there's that comfort level. But now, what do I do? I have occasional freelance gigs. I was just working on an animation project for some lovely people in Europe. We'll see how that goes. A little bit of money there, but a lot of it is self-directed now. Do I put out music and hope to make money? Well, no. You put out music, you expect you won't make money.
Yeah.
You write a novel. You make little short music videos. You work with your friends on some short films that maybe do well on the festival circuit. Again, with no expectation of gold pouring down upon you, but you find, at least I find, that in this very odd period of human history and odd period of my life, you have to find what makes you excited to sit down and say, I've got 4 uninterrupted hours where no one is going to be bothering me. What can I do? This song that I have halfway pulled out of the fog, can I pull it all the way out and make a demo? Can I push another 600 words ahead on this novel, which maybe no one will ever care about, but I'm interested in it? Also, I do these live shows of different kinds, and I'm always trying to plan ahead down the road. Where can I go to get on stage and talk about either my own music or corporate musicals? I don't know if you read up on that in the bio, but I should stop talking. I'm out of breath, and I want to hear what you want to say next.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many things that have been a part of your career arc that are fascinating. But I want to know this. When you were in the third grade, when you were the kid at career day, what did you want to be? What was your dream to grow up and become?
I went through some phases, and I guess parts of those phases are still there. By the time I was in high school, I thought, oh, I want to be a writer. Oh, I love Stephen King. I wish I could write awesome stories. Now, in my gray hair phase, I'm trying that much more. But when I was younger, like in third grade, you know what I really wanted to be was an archaeologist.
Okay.
I wanted to hack through the jungles of Guatemala and find an undiscovered Mayan city. I wanted to find some corner of the Valley of the Kings in Egypt that everyone else had missed and find the treasures that would not only be awesome treasures, but like, oh my God, now we understand this civilization more. So I had those fantasies. And in a strange roundabout way, I did eventually become an archaeologist. I did not think at the time that I was going to be a songwriter or put out music. As a teenager, I'm sitting in the dark in my bedroom with the headphones on, listening to Led Zeppelin, thinking, oh man, I want to be up there being a guitar hero. I didn't really see a path forward to that. But then if you live long enough and get curious enough and things, strange pathways open up. I'm not saying I should be up on stage as the new member of Led Zeppelin, but I'm doing my stuff.
Yeah, totally. So, how did this all begin for you? How did your career arc in entertainment, how did it begin?
When you're my age and it's the 70s or early 80s and you watch television, there's not a feeling in the air that this could be a career path, or at least it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And yes, TV shows had credits going by at the ends, but really, what 15-year-old is thinking about that? I was not. So
Yeah.
I didn't really understand that TV shows had writers and that writing for a TV show could be a serious grown-up job. It was only later in college, and I got on the humor magazine and started to hear that, oh, so and so who graduated 2 years earlier, he's writing for SNL now, or this person's over here at the Letterman show, and you go, oh, so that was the light bulb moment for me, kind of the realization that in theory it could be possible. There was certainly no easy pathway forward, but could be possible.
So, I got to tell you, when I was a kid, the coolest thing that I ever saw was David Letterman. I have been a lifelong fan, and I remember reading an article in Rolling Stone that kind of deconstructed those early years of all of the college kids that were a part of
Mhm.
that staff. And it was uncharted territory, and how they kind of created that they were the precursor to the Daily Show and all of this. Just this whole examination of that. But at its elemental level, to be involved with such a wondrous experiment that was David Letterman, how did that feel?
When I got there, it was 1990. So the first Glory Days wave had already come, and it wasn't gone, but it was not shockingly new anymore. It really was like late 70s, early 80s. You had writers and performers who'd grown up on TV from its inception and their infancy, who are now regurgitating it backwards and upside down as parodies of all the forms and cliches that had been baked into the bones of America by this point. And so pioneers who arrive at that stage first get to run free through the orchard, grabbing all the low-hanging fruit. By the time I got there, it was still thrilling and exciting, but it already felt like, oh, this show is 8 years old.
Yeah.
And that was nothing. The show was uh, 23 years old by the time it went off the air. So we had a long way to go. So it was a combination of, wow, this is exciting. What will I do? And also, oh, I got here when most of the fun was already over. And that was not the case in the end. But it did feel like, oh, the old days are over already.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what when you look at your creative career, what was the time period? What was the gig? What was the uh the slice of time that you grew the most as a creative, or you felt like this was your calling, this is what you need to do with your life?
The early years of me working on the Letterman show, and also I did write a Simpsons episode, which is well regarded. I was still becoming who I might become later. It was not until much later, uh, and 2000s, 2000 teens, when I realized I've been in this room with smart, funny people for so long. I have sharpened my voice. I've developed my sensibility. And then I started to have things I wanted to say that were not necessarily going to fit on the show.
Yeah.
So it was like the Letterman show, the world's most fabulous day job for a funny person, but it built me up enough that eventually I thought, what do I want to do beyond the day job? And it slowly dawned on me, I have outside projects to work on.
So when you come into an enterprise like Letterman, or you're around someone like Lorne Michaels, you're walking into something that's already a legacy. How do you niche that voice of yours to make it get in there and expand and become who you are, and pay homage to your creative juices?
Well, that's always the million-dollar question because a show like SNL or Letterman or whatever, they already have people on staff who can do what they do. They don't need somebody who's going to duplicate the exact sort of thing. So a show like that is always looking for someone who has a slightly different version of the voice, taking it at an angle we never saw before, but we would like if we saw it.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things you don't know it until you see it. But sometimes you see a young writer and you say, that's interesting. We don't have anything quite like that, but I think we would all enjoy that. So that is the quest. And if you get there, you have to uh, walk this line of hit the show's sensibility, but bring something a little different that will widen the spectrum.
I feel like when Conan came on, there was a level of his writers and his people that were kind of doing that. They were taking that Letterman baton, but they were really doing some crazy, outlandish stuff. Is that accurate? Is that kind of what was going on?
I think it flowed from the top. I knew Conan in college. I thought he was marvelous. I just thought for once the good guys have won and
Yeah.
he's gotten to where he should be. And so I've always been happy about that. But yeah, he had a very powerful and uh, singular vision, and he gathered people around him to help build that and expand that. So I've always been very pleased that that worked out. But there are some shows and some people who are more just like, okay, the corporate focus group says we got to do more of this, and people don't understand that, so we got to play it safe. And I'm not the one looking at the bottom line of a network or whatever, so I don't need to worry about that as much. But that is part of the ecosystem too.
Who is your hero? Who has been someone that has fueled your creative juices all these years?
Hmm. I I don't know that I grew up with comedy heroes, even though I was like a funny, wise ass kid and teenager. I was not a comedy nerd. So I didn't. You read so many things about stand-ups who knew by the age of 12 that they were going to be a stand-up and they were obsessively listening to the recordings of Richard Pryor or Steve Martin or whatever. I had close to none of that. So, I mean, I certainly was impressed by Conan when I met him, and then getting on the Letterman staff. Well, that's got to get your attention just watching and listening to this man's curious, restless, brilliant mind every day. That certainly was a huge part of my formative years. But I mean, I liked music stuff, and I mentioned Stephen King, which I still think is somewhere deep in the DNA of my creative life.
So, in all these creative pursuits that you've done over your career, what's the biggest risk that you've taken?
Biggest risk. Well, sometimes you don't know you're taking risks.
Yeah.
Like I did not understand how the entertainment business worked, and I was happily in my little Letterman silo for a long time. And when that ended, I thought, oh yeah, I'll be fine because everyone knows the Letterman show, and I'm a senior writer who's well regarded. I'll be fine. Turns out, no, nobody cares. And if you haven't spent the last decade networking and all that, you're not really in the business anymore. So that I took a risk without realizing it there. But I guess emotionally, the risk that I've taken in the last couple of years is putting out music because I think a lot of my friends, if they thought of me at all, well, oh, Steve Young, oh yeah, he's a funny writer. And then I'm up in front of them with a guitar and look at my new music video and check out my songs, which were produced in Nashville and involve Grammy winners, and I think to show yourself a completely different side of yourself like that and kind of blow up people's perceptions of you. It can be risky because not every kind of music is for everybody. And what if I look like an idiot and all that? But you got to do it.
Take me back to your childhood. Where were you born and raised, and what were these creative seeds of both writing and
Mhm.
music? How were those embedded and sowed in you?
Grew up in a little town, Pepperell, Massachusetts, an hour northwest of Boston. Semi-suburban. My father drove into Boston, worked at Logan Airport, but it was fields and forests and abandoned railroad tracks and quarries. And now we would be much more nervous about letting kids go out and we'll see you in 9 hours. But that's how it was then. And yeah, I think, quite an average American kid of that period. You know, I played Little League baseball and watched some TV and was doing fine in school and all that. But I don't think there was anything that was an overt sign that I was going to become this comedic person. And like I said, I didn't really have comedy heroes growing up. I just thought, oh yeah, that's funny or whatever, but it didn't connect to me as my destiny. So a little bit mysterious there.
So, in the realm of music, what was the first live concert that you saw that blew you away? Made you think that that either want to do that one day, or they were hatching dreams for you?
Hmm. Well, that's another fascinating zone. My experience with live concerts has been on the low side. And I've found a few other people like this, people who are intensely interested in music and have it in their heads all the time and listen to stuff and watch YouTube videos and think about it and discuss it, but don't have the interest in the large ocean of people live experience. And I can count, I don't know, I've been to a few concerts, but they did not seem like, oh, this should be me, which is strange because now I'm trying to get up on stage and do
Yeah.
stuff. But apparently, other people find this very compelling. So I have to go where go where the action is. But for me, a lot of music is in my head and in my apartment, and maybe that's true of millions of people. I don't know if that's been fully figured out yet.
So, in your Letterman years, what was what was something that you wrote or that you were a part of that rises to the top that you're the proudest of?
Oh, there are some fun highlights, but so much of it is uh, transitory, ephemeral, because you're doing stuff on current events, which even a month later, people,
Yeah.
"Oh, I don't remember that news story." I had some weird evergreen things I was involved with, like there was a bit we did at NBC and then later at CBS called "The Strong Guy, the Fat Guy, the Genius," in
Yeah.
which Dave Letterman walked around the neighborhood or the offices and asked people, "Do you have something for the strong guy to break? Do you have something for the fat guy to eat? Do you have a question for the genius?" And it was just this out of left field, kind of a perfect thing. I had part of the idea. Mr. Letterman suggested other parts of it, and we wrote a theme song for it. And it was just like no one could have seen this coming, and it was a lot of fun. There were many other like tiny fragments, which I have a few on my website on YouTube, Steve Young World. A lot of them are fine, but they seem so far back in the rear view mirror now.
Yeah. So, coming away from that enterprise, did you have to detox out of it? I mean, being used to that world for that long, and I'm sure it moves fast. There's a lot of moving parts. When you finally got away from it, did it take you a little while to get acclimated to regular life?
Yeah, and I guess in some ways we're coming up on 10 years since the show ended, and I still feel a guilty pleasure in the morning if I wake up and I haven't woken up because an alarm clock is telling me that I need to get up and get the kids to school and get down to the office and ride the conveyor belt all day. I still feel that it's a luxury not to be doing that. It can be a narcotic because you can just say, "Oh, I don't need to do anything." Well, you do need to do something, not only financially, but to be alive. I miss the camaraderie and the great people. I do miss the steady paycheck. We got a lot of pretty good stuff on the air that we'd think of at 9 in the morning, and America would be watching it that night. That's miraculous to
Yeah.
so many people in creative fields who put something in a pipeline that takes years to come out the other side. And I just got used to, we'll do it in 5 hours. And I loved that. And I have kept a little of that ethos. I've started in the past year making my own really short music videos and putting them on my YouTube channel on a shorts playlist, just like 35, 40 a minute long little odd songs and whatever. I can make them, I can put them out myself. I don't have to wait for a giant corporation or 10 layers of producers to approve it.
So, speaking of waking up in the morning, what is that creative flow for you to wake up and to do this work? You know, not only to do it at the highest level that you can, but to take care of yourself every day. What is that collective energy for you?
Who said anything about the highest level?
Where did
Yeah.
that come from?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that vote of confidence. It is hard. It's always been hard for thousands of years. I wonder if the like painters just sat there with their little dab of ochre and just looked at it. I don't know, antelope, I guess. I don't know. But now, yes, I have music. I always have like 9 songs I want to try to get done. Videos to put out, and uh, the great white whale of finishing the novel. But it is harder than ever because we live in a world, and I'm guilty of this. You get hypnotized. You just go like this, and just, oh, look, there's more things, and you have to make the very concrete. I'm going to set that aside. I'm not going to look at that. And sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. Uh, so yeah, there's stuff I want to get to, but the path is foggy and rocky. But I just tell myself, I'll just open the file. I'll just look at what I wrote yesterday. Oh, actually, I could do that. Oh, and then suddenly, if you're lucky, 4 hours have gone by
Yeah.
and you surged ahead on something. Doesn't happen all the time.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. A subway car pulls up. You run into the 18-year-old version of you. You could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated over all these years. What advice would you give that young version of you?
Hmm. uh, Certain World Series to bet on.
That's right.
Uh, yeah, we're not supposed to do that. That's in the manual. You can't do that.
Yeah, Biff messed that up.
Yeah, I don't know that I've gotten so much wiser. I would just tell myself, you're going to have a crazy ride. Parts of it are going to be great. Actually, you're going to be way luckier than you really deserve. Parts of it are going to be hard, but uh, you're going to do some stuff that will make you happy and surprise you. So just go with it.
So that you've been fortunate to be in a world that we all look it like in kind of an aquarium. We're looking from the outside in, and you've seen all the eyeballs, and you've been around the people that have created the eyeballs to look in. Of all of the people that you've been around in this entertainment world, who was somebody that you always looked forward to running into? Who was that one person that just always tugged on the heartstrings, and you were like, man, I really want to hang out with them. I can't wait to see them today.
We haven't really gone down this path, but a large part of my last 15 or 20 years or so has been my deep dive into the strange and hidden world of industrial musicals or corporate musical theater,
Yeah.
Broadway type shows created for private corporate audiences at sales meetings and conventions. And so I actually working for the Letterman show for the Dave's record collection bit, I started finding these strange record albums, a whole musical about selling and servicing diesel engines or selling insurance or fluorescent light tubes. And it seemed so ridiculous that surely this must have been a faked up bit on the Letterman show, but it was real. There's a wonderful documentary called Bathtubs Over Broadway that I'm the subject of, made by filmmaker David Letterman, and it shows me going from sort of laughing at these shows to being curious about them to finding the people who wrote them and performed in them. some of those people ended up being very big parts of my life. There's one gentleman who's gone now, died just about 2 years ago at 96. Hank Beebe. He worked on the Diesel Engine musical, worked on a GE Silicones musical, American Motors, a hundred other ones. But when I found him and started talking to him, I realized he had such a great attitude about so many things in life, and he became kind of a mentor for me and also eventually a collaborator. But he told me things like, no matter how weird or ephemeral the corporate gig, I could not do a mediocre job. I only had one setting, which was bring it all every time. And I thought that is thrilling for
Yeah,
somebody who's in a any creative world where you think, I don't know if any of this matters and no one's going to care and no one's going to listen. You have to please yourself first and then hopefully outer rings of other people. I've heard other people say, uh, art for ourselves first. And he had such a high-minded sense of, I know that no one is ever going to care about this Xerox copier sales meeting musical, but I want to sit in the back of the room the day it happens and go, yep, that was exactly what I would hope for on a thing like that. So that guy, big part of my life. People can find the movie Bathtubs Over Broadway on Amazon and Apple. But yeah, that was somebody special who was not technically part of the mainstream TV business, but
yeah.
there you go. That's kind of
I
my
love
odd.
it. That's a great story. So of everything that you've done and accomplished in your life, overall, personally, professionally, what are you the proudest of?
Well, it's hard to not put the Letterman years at the near at or near the top of the list because it was for such a huge part of my life and a well-regarded show, and I did good work there that I'm proud of. But that was somebody else's show. And I think the rest of my life will be engaged with trying to find out what are my own things with my name at the top.
Yeah,
Can I sustain and carry something like that? So, of course, I didn't do it all by myself. I have had wonderful, generous friends helping me, but putting out an album with me on the album art, and these are my songs that I wrote the music and the lyrics, and I'm singing them. And yes, Nashville geniuses are making them sound great, but that that would have shocked the 18-year-old me on
yeah,
the subway that that could actually get that far. So that has the potential to, I don't know, be my work and legacy rather than just helping somebody else's. Not that I'm not thrilled to have been a part of this Letterman show and The Simpsons and all the rest, but to try to get your own stuff front and center and get past your own worry about, oh, I shouldn't presume that people want to listen to me. Well, your friends are curious about what you're up to, and if it's really good, maybe it'll ripple outwards a little bit. So there you
for
go.
sure. I love it. Steve, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, uh, I'm a strangely shaped peg, still trying to find what sort of hole there is in the 2020s that fits me. But I'm blessed with a certain degree of serenity, and some of that comes from, uh, as I said, not being in a panic about paying a mortgage. But I'm not like living a life of fabulous luxury. I'm not in a panic. So there's a certain amount of serenity and a certain amount of having gotten to this place where I can say, I'm not going to ask permission to make stuff, and I'm just going to make my songs, and some of them will be home recordings, and some of them I'll have help with. But I will satisfy myself by making my very strange songs and making them to my satisfaction and writing stuff to my satisfaction. And hopefully there's something that radiates out of me if people see me like, that guy seems okay with who he is.
Yeah, I dig it. So if anyone wants to delve into the music, any of your creative pursuits, your world, where can they go?
Oh, yes, for you three people listening who are actually going to look into this. You can find the music. My album is called Broken Heart Insurance, recorded in Nashville with absolutely killer people. It's shocking to me how legit it sounds. steveyoungmusic.hearnow.com. That's Hearnow. And that's like a jumping off point for Spotify and Apple and Deezer. Are you all on the Deezer? You should be on Deezer. That's where it's all happening. steveyoungworld.com is my website, and there's updates about what kinds of shows I'm doing and where I'm going and new music and short films and all that. YouTube and TikTok. If TikTok still exists as you're hearing this,
Yeah.
Steve Young World. On Instagram, I'm Pants Steve, which relates back to the old Letterman show. Worldwide Pants was Dave Letterman's company, and we all got Pants email addresses like 30 years ago, and little fragments of that have survived. So Pants Steve on Instagram, and I just put up odd photos and cheerfully whimsical things and whatnot. But yes, I'm trying to be in the business of being Steve Young, and it's hard because really no one else can be Steve Young. I can't like dump it off in someone else's
Right.
lap, but I am entertaining myself.
Absolutely. Steve, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you
All
for a
right.
little portal into your world. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And what's your prediction for Sunday?
I'm going to tell you right now, every season there's an architecture that goes into it. So like last year when the lights got bright, they turned it on and they were just really good. This year there's a weird magic, there's a weird voodoo, and it's like it's New Orleans, I don't know what, but you know what they say, things happen in threes. I feel good about Kansas City.
Okay. For the purposes of this interview, I'm a huge Kansas City fan, die hard. That won't stand up in court, but I wish you all very well and a happy conclusion. You know what? It costs me nothing to say it. Yeah, sure, I'm rooting for Kansas City.
That's it. That's what I like to hear.
All right.
Steve, thank you, sir. I appreciate it, man.
All right, Joe. Thank you.
Cheers. Take care.